Alrighty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. So today we have touched base on breeding a couple of different times throughout the updates that have happened, but I have not done one since it's been a while. So decided to go ahead and talk about, because I've been messing with it a lot more and understanding the whole IV system since the Bella Noir update. I guess now I have enough breeding experience to basically describe what's going on when you're breeding for perfects. And perfects, I mean like you have all of the passives that you want and you have them at 100 IVs. So good way to show this is actually with the Blazamut Ryu that we had got the other day. We've been working on the Xenoguard a bit anyway, so we've already got what we want from this, but we did start out with one that had, I think, Musclehead and Ferocious, so I had to breed for Serenity. The reason why we got that is because of the puppy dog that we got, this little guy right here. Now, was this realistically what we needed to breed into him with the Lucky and Legend? No, I would have much rather put in something else, but this still works for Ferocious Musclehead. So it helps with speeding up the breeding process, especially when you're starting from nothing. When it comes to Blazamut Ryu, there's no way to manipulate it. As soon as you get the egg's there. There's no way to get a Musclehead or Ferocious onto him that I know of, or anything using the dog specifically. It's random. So with what we had started out with was actually one that had Nocturnal. Now the Work Slave one did come with 100 IV for the attack power, but unfortunately, because it does have that on there, it wouldn't show up again on any of these, because that Work Slave and Eternal Flame won't produce it unless I had gotten one with that 100 IV with Eternal Flame. Because it had Work Slave on it, that's not one that we wanted to really keep in the long run. So when it comes to breeding in your IVs, first and foremost, you need to start with your passives. That is bottom line, hands down. There's nothing else easier to go by, because I've tried the reversal of starting with high-end IVs, but they end up almost like resetting when you start putting in different passives. So there's got to be some sort of connection with the IVs and the passives, which is why it's easier to transfer with them. With me having, because a lot of people were wondering how I got 30 Yormantides, with the vast majority of them having full 100s. Well, that's pretty simple. I did a bunch of Yormantide Ignises a long time ago, and I got 6 with perfect IVs on them. And I kept the breeders from that, which involved one of these guys, who was one of my breeders, Legend and Musclehead. So it was an easy transfer to get that over to a Yormantide, because all I had to do was breed a boss version of Yormantide that had Lord of the Sea on it, and then wait for that to come out and wait for the IVs to get to that point. With these in particular Yormantides, I think I bred them specifically from start from 0 into the full 100s. I didn't use IV fruits on them at the time, because when I IV fruit hunted, when I was killing Bella Noir a bunch of times, Libero specifically, I ended up putting them into my Jetragons, which that is this team right here. So these guys aren't perfect 100s, but some of them got double 100s, some of them got some other stuff, but their IVs on the low end are kind of poo-poo. Eventually, we're probably going to have to rebreed these guys in, but it shouldn't take too much time, considering that we're just looking for the IVs. So we'll be able to take a couple of these guys with the breeders that I had saved and put some fruits in there with doing the dog coin, hunting for that. Pretty simple situation with that. Same goes with the Noclums. With the Noclums and everything, what we did is we basically bred until we got a couple that were on the higher side as far as the breeding. I think they were at 80 across the board, so it took 2 fruits and they were at 100 apiece. So I needed 2 stout, 2 of the vitality, and 2 of the attack power ones. So 6 total fruits at 500 a fruit. That can kind of be kind of expensive. So it was like 3K dog coin, and I was able to max out at least one of them to get that way. I probably ended up pulling a couple of the breeders with a 100 IV of the defense, I think it was. So I didn't have to do the defense. I think it was just health and attack. But all in all, as you can see here, we've already already gotten these exos up pretty good now. We're getting some pretty decent stuff here. Our breeding partners that we have are these guys and these guys. So I got them split up between male and female, and the IVs are actually starting to show up on these. So these are at like 70, 80. Some of them are at 90. We did have one hit 100 with the defense. And when it comes down to this stuff, it legitimately is just time and switching out stuff and spending the amount of time that you need to switching out the certain things to get the better IVs and to get your perfect passives. But like I said, start out with the passives first and then build up with the IVs, because otherwise you're going to be beating yourself in the skull if you have already 100 IVs and you're looking for the passives, and then the passives, when they come out, they don't have the IVs, because then you're just going to have to go back and rebreed the stuff. So it makes it a longer process. But as you can see here, we actually got some of the stuff coming out on the Blazamut Ryu. We did have a Musclehead, Ferocious, and Eternal Flame, but we're looking for Serenity, which I think we actually started having some pop out with that. No, we got Impatient, so we might be putting that out and replacing that with Ferocious, but I might not do that. I might keep it with Ferocious, Musclehead, Eternal Flame, and Serenity, just to go for all four. Might be a better build specifically with the Blazamut Ryu and the stuff that you can only breed into itself. That's why we have Ferocious on the Xenoguard as well. But these right here are all like the throwaways. So I have invested into these just because they can be invested into the ones when we get our final product. With the Xenoguard, we do have 6 of these guys who are pretty on up there, but have gotten the perfect roles that we wanted as far as Otherworldly Cells, Serenity, Ferocious, and Musclehead. Now, this one doesn't have the defense on it, so that one's probably going to be thrown out eventually, but the rest of these guys are all in the green. So we're getting close enough with these to where we could technically take some IV fruits, get these guys maxed out, and then call it a day. But that's not what we want to do. In my opinion, the way that is best suited for this, so you can mass produce, is to breed or put the IV fruits on the breeders. And the reason for that is because then you can crossbreed over for other pals. And like I said before, the breeding matrix that I specifically use is palworld.gg. I will leave a link in the description. And yes, it is up to date. They have the trees, they have to where you can put one and one together and see what goes on. But realistically, with these newer pals, there are four in total that can only be bred into itself, with the Xenoguard, the Xenovator, the New Moon Lady, and Blazamut Ryu. So to get these up, you really have to have some breeding knowledge for this, and that's what I'm trying to spread onto you guys. So when it comes down to processing this stuff as well, I mean, these guys right here, like I have one with Eternal Flame that has a 97 attack. Do we want that? No, because it doesn't have the rest of the stuff green. And if you don't have the rest of the stuff green, then you're going to be fighting the whole time of getting this up. Now, you could work with that one and have, say, like we have this one here, which is a female with Eternal Flame, and say that we had another one like with these IVs, but instead of Masochist, it was Musclehead, so Ferocious and Musclehead. Then we could breed these two together and see if we could actually pull both the 97 IV and the 70 and 82 as far as the health goes and combined into it. But we're far enough along with these guys now that that's not really something that we are looking for. That is early game when you're looking for that, once you get the passives on there. So these are the next in line for breeding, just because we got the passives on, or yeah, these are the passives that we're looking for. We're still looking for one more as far as the breeding stuff, but we have Impatient being bred into an Eternal Flame, so eventually you will randomly get Serenity. One thing that I will suggest as well, when you're looking for specific passives, if you start to get passives that are within the same realm of that passive, say Musclehead, Ferocious, Aggressive, so on and so forth, or a Hooligan, stuff like that, if you start breeding with those passives, you will end up seeing those in particular passives pop up more often. It's kind of the same thing when you're breeding for speed passives. There are chances of you getting the other passives at random, but there is also kind of a method to the madness when it comes to that stuff. Some people thought that I was cheating. I am on Xbox. Here you go. I'm not on a PC. I don't have any way to mod the game. I don't have any buddies that are on PC that are playing currently with me that can use that stuff. All of them are on Steam for good reason too, because the Xbox version at first was kind of sloppy. It's definitely made it a little bit better, but it still has its troubles, especially for you guys on the S. Condolences. It is a pain to do anything on there, especially to get Ryu. But yeah, you see here, we have Masochist and Waterproof on here. Those aren't what we wanted. We wanted to basically single out Musclehead and Eternal Flame. Here, the same thing here with Ferocious and Eternal Flame. We don't want Hooligan, we don't want Nocturnal on them, and we ended up pulling an Impatient as well. So these guys breeding with that will end up coming back with that. But we do have, after breeding that out quite a few times, we do have an Eternal Flame and Musclehead combination on a female. She doesn't have that good of IVs, but eventually when you start combining these guys, you will get the IVs. Now, I don't really want to combine this one with that because of the Nocturnal specifically, but we might. That's why he's still here. But the rest of these are what we're kind of looking for here. We might do a mix as well and do one with Impatient and Serenity, and then do one with Ferocious and Serenity. But eventually these guys will get to a point where I can take and get some of the IV fruits that I have, which now that we have a good way to farm the fruits with either dog coin, or if you've already bred up a bunch of stuff like I have, then you have a way to do it with Blazemut Ryu or Bellanoir Libero. She drops the fruits as well, and I've always had a way to be able to mine that since I did this early on. Like, I'm telling you, this is time invested, and you don't believe me, then I'll show you. I have 64 days, 12 hours, and 27 minutes invested into this game. That's not just this world. I had 2 other worlds that were about 10 days a piece on that. So realistically, on this world alone, I probably have about 44 days played, because the other 2 worlds got bricked back when Xbox was having the world autosave data failed problem, and not the white lettering with the box that came up. That one was kind of easily manipulated. I had the red lettering in the bottom left-hand corner. Those of you who have been watching me long enough to remember that it was an absolute atrocious thing to happen to a world, because literally at that point, nothing else would save ever again. And it's because the cache ended up getting to a point where it would stop saving, which I figured that out on the 3rd world, so I stopped mass producing stuff so much. I basically only made what I needed and used it when I needed it to keep it on a low end. So right now we are opening Blazemut Ryu eggs. We got 2 breeding pins going with him right now to kind of keep this going. And we've got about 4 pins with the Xenoguard, so he's probably going to be the first one that we get everything up, because now we're moving for IVs for him. But see, we got an Impatient there. We'll see what that is looking like, male or female, and see the IVs. It does have a good health IV, so we will take him and put him with the other breeding groups. And it is a female, so that's good, because I've been getting mostly males with the stuff that we needed on them. So out of these guys, we did get a separation of Ferocious, so that's good. We'll keep that over here. Whenever you're looking for a single separation, the doubles are not bad to go with as well, but you really want to have them as single separations, because that'll make it to where your IVs will transfer a little bit easier, because then you can say that you want to do a specific 2. So say that you want to have Musclehead and Ferocious on one. Then we could take this Ferocious and combine it with this Musclehead and Eternal Flame, because they both have, that's what we're looking for right there. But once we get these 2 going, then usually the passives will come out more often. As we had saw with the stuff that we just did, we got a lot of the Eternal Flame and Impatient. And we got one with a 93, so this will be one that we save into the breeding stuff. So at this point, we would be looking for a Musclehead and Serenity, but we haven't had Serenity pop out yet. And when it does, that's when we'll start throwing it in there. And again, when you're looking for specifics like this, and say that you do get one that has Serenity on it, but it's mixed up with a bunch of other stuff, you need to extract that. So put it with something that you want it to be combined with, and maybe you get lucky. Say that I do have like a female that has all this random stuff, but it has Eternal Flame and it has Serenity on it. So we would then combine that Serenity, even though it's got a couple of things that we don't want, with a male version of a Musclehead, and be able to then, hopefully with a lot of luck and a lot of breeding, within 20 eggs, you should get a separation of it. 20 to 40 eggs, I'd say. It might happen sooner, but I give that big gap, because that way you're not disappointed when you're opening up the egg. To get certain passives that you are not like seeing, that you're trying to get going, like I said, combine the ones that are closely related to it. So if I'm looking for Musclehead, but I only have Ferocious, or vice versa, you can combine with Aggressive or Hooligan, and usually it will pop up eventually. It just takes a little bit to do so. I personally have 12 main breeding farms. So we had 6 over there, and we have 6 over here, usually with a bunch of combinations. If I'm going for specifics though, usually I'm taking and doing all of these including the other 6 on the other side, with only one type of PAL. And usually I'm using those to breed in the IVs and the other stuff. When you're doing mass breeding like I did for the Yormantides, it requires a lot. So you could take and use the Philanthropus. I probably butchered that word, but it's close enough. You know what I'm talking about. And be able to breed that with another one to increase the amount of eggs that you're getting. Because one thing that I will say is that usually you will hit your IVs and all of your higher end PALs with the IVs and passives before you hit the amount that is necessary for mass breeding. As you can see here, we still have 4 more to max out, and then 1 that's at a 3-star right now. So these still need to be maxed out with their stars. And the way that we do that, those of you guys that have been watching the channel know about this place. We built a massive breeding farm. We have built in the small desert, and we have done a breeding tower. There is 25 breeding pens. The bottom floor is just Anubis for souls. That's a quick way to do that with a butcher machine, especially with that out now. That is such a handy piece of equipment. I highly recommend getting that because it makes it a lot easier to get your souls or other items that drop from certain pals that you want to mass produce. So we have 5 Anubis here, but then we have a 6th one over at the other breeding base. So that probably will be switched out eventually, but moment it isn't like I need that breeding pen because I have a lot of them going. But yeah, there is 5 floors. The pathing works. If you guys want to know how to build this, I'll leave a link in the description. Well, not a link in the description. I'll leave this at the end of the video where you can click on it to see how we went about this. The top floor wasn't yet built, but using the pillars and everything, that is such a great add-on. It makes it to where you can do stuff like this, where you can build in very odd places and still have like a decent structure size. We maxed out everything and literally did the whole thing like crazy. And again, I am on Xbox. There's 50 pals out here and we are not crashing. And we did the raid, and we've actually recorded that the other day, and there's 50 pals there that were all attacking Ryu. So there's some validity behind the old Xbox Series X. It's a good little powerhouse for a console, I'll tell you that. A mass breeding on this scale as well is like, it's time consuming. There's not anything to speed up the opening of eggs other than the incubation timer. That's it. So yeah, we could throw the egg in there and open it up. But when you have, 500 eggs that you got to open up, it's going to take a while. But I think it's worth it to do this because you can be sitting on a bunch of eggs as well. Like, I'm not going through and opening up all these because when I do, this should finish out the rest of the Yormantides that I need to have done. But right now we're kind of going for the Blazemut Ryu, Xenoguard, and Xenovader, and trying to get them up and ready and going. Maybe when I get a gap into the system, then we will do that, but as of right now, we do not. When it comes to what you want to breed with, 2-2 is the optimal. So 2 passives of one type and 2 on the other. But there are ways to get it to work. Otherwise, you can do a 3-1, you can do a 4-1, you can do a 3-2. I've done a 4-2. I've done a couple of different things. Now, the percentages are going to be a little bit further between as far as getting the right passives, but as long as all the passives that you're putting onto them, 4-4 works sometimes for some reason, but as long as you have all the same passives on the ones that you're breeding with, then you'll eventually get what you're looking for. So yeah, whenever we do get these guys lined up and get the IVs up high enough to where we can fruit them the rest of the way up for breeding purposes, then we'll be Gucci on that. But we're still missing one of the passives that will happen eventually. With the Xenoguards, we've already got basically our lineup now to where we could fruit these guys and get what we want out of them. This one's a little low, so if I had a female Musclehead, which I might somewhere. So we currently don't have one with just Musclehead, so we will be putting this one back into the box, and we will put this Serenity in Musclehead instead. So this is a 3-2. This will work. It might be a little bit slower, but it will come out with better results because this one has better IVs. And if you're wondering about the IV glasses, some people don't know this, most people do, but you can make them using the workbench. As you can see here, the material that it costs is refined ingots, palladium fragments, ancient civilization parts, and then ancient civilization cores. The cores can be gotten off of the oil rig, because the other way that you can pull them is from Blazemut Ryu or Bella Noir, La Biro. I think the first one drops it as well. So you could go after the level 30 and get Ancient Civilization cores. Otherwise, in order to get like good IVs without those glasses is a big pain, because you have to get them up to about level 15 and then go into a breeding calculator to then figure out what their IVs are. And some of the calculators aren't as straightforward as the number system that it is. Some of them are. I personally did not use a breeding calculator, or not a breeding calculator, but an IV calculator until the IV glasses had came out. The only thing that I did was visually look at their attack power, and that's all that I was really going for, which is why I had to redo some of my stuff when it came down to it. Shadowbeak specifically, because his defense was not that great. His attack IV was great, but I had to rebreed him. And like I said, I have bred numerous things in here. I have bred 613 chickens to prove a point, done 124 of the Lift Monk, 130 of the Fox Parks, 492 of the Rubies. Any of the booster pals are going to be well over 400. I did 481 of the Sparkets, did 220 of the Pin Kings. I've done over 100 on most of these guys. And then when we go into the bigger breeds, like we've done with some of the other stuff, let's see here. I bred 593 cows as well to prove a point. Done 476 Gobfins. All these guys are going to be in the hundreds, because if you've seen any of the videos that I've done for the Is It Worth It videos, those pals are going to be at well over 100 because of how much you have to invest into them. We have done almost 2,000 Capris, again to prove a point that they are not that great, but unironically, we beat Frost Stallion with this on stream. That was insanity. Pretty wild. But yeah, when we go to the bigger breeding bunch that I've done, like we've done 464 of her, but my mass breeding ones that I've done so far would be, we did 708 Bushis to get 6 of them maxed out with work traits, 375 of the Ragnahawks, which we have a decent one, but not a great one, 181, 135. These are all like low ball stuff. Azarobi, low ball. But yeah, like with our bigger breeds, we've bred 2,374 regular Blazemuts, done 788 of the Hell Zephyrs, 1,946 of the Astegons, 2,160 of the Anubis, 3,600 of the Yormtide Ignis, 2,696 of the Yormtide Ignis, and then 3,600 of the Yormtide. Done 229 of the Sezaku Aqua and 259 of just the regular Suzaku, whatever. 2,096 of Lylene, 125, 779, 389, 514, 946, 2,440, 562, 574, 2,456. And so far, we've bred 224 of the Xeno Guards, and that was just to get the passives on there. We'll probably hit around 500 eggs before we get the IVs straightened out. Because even with the 500 that I did for Bella Noir, Libero, I don't even know where she's at. Probably up in the tower somewhere. That's the other thing that I'll show you guys. Lack of frames over here, but these are all breeding pairs that I've bred for in the past, or have the stuff that we were looking for on them, so on and so forth. So I keep the vast majority of my like higher up breeding pairs for being able to crossbreed back into stuff. Most everything in here has some form of either work speed or fighting traits that are on their passives, and most of them have pretty decent IVs. Now the reason why that's so high up above my base is to keep from down here lagging too bad. So, because it got bad at one point when before they extended the PAL box, I used to have the vast majority of this stuff, like including all of these Jet Dragons, all of these Yormtides up in there as well, with the Blazemuts that I did as well. I think that they did do something a little bit with the breeding, because it seems like it's a lot easier to get the higher IVs now. Of course, with the fruits, you can just max out your breeding pair and mass produce them. That's really where your best bet is, and where you're going to be getting the vast majority of your stuff. So farm for fruits, make sure you go for your passives first, and then worry about the IVs last. I hope this answered the vast majority of your questions on how to do this stuff. This was a fairly long video with me talking a lot, but if you guys have any more questions for me, feel free to visit me over on twitch.tv/PopeYouAndThePope. Link will be in the description, and ask me over there. Drop me a follow, you know, helps out with everything else that's going on. And we are going to be doing some stuff over there tonight, multiplayer wise, hopefully doing some more verses, and we'll start working on some videos for that, because because we tested it out last night and it was kind of meh, to say the least. Not really exciting. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, drop a like. If you guys enjoy my content, drop a sub, and write down in the comments below what you're breeding for right now, if you're breeding for anything. Other than that, keep your willy washed, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.